In this video, I will report on John Robison's reflections and reactions to what he discovered during his examination of the original papers and correspondences of the Bavarian Illuminati. He begins with an overview of the exoteric aim of the order, meaning the aim the order utilized as a cover for its real agenda. Robison says, quote, "The great aim professed by the order is to make men happy, and the means professed to be employed as the only and surely effective is making them good. And this is to be brought about by enlightening the mind and freeing it from the dominion of superstition and prejudices. This purpose is effected by its producing a just and steady morality. This done and becoming universal, there can be little doubt but that the peace of society will be the consequence, that government, subordination, and all the disagreeable coercions of civil governments will be unnecessary, and that society may go on peaceably in a state of perfect liberty and equality." End quote. Robison is extremely skeptical of this pronouncement of aims by the Illuminati. He thinks that while the Illuminati claim to be striving to be illuminated, it is not the condition of a clear and pure light that they seek. Instead, it is what he calls a false glare, which shows the object only on one side, that is tinged with partial colors thrown on it by neighboring objects. In other words, it is the dark side of the light the Illuminati pursue, the side operating in the shadows. For this reason, Robison is suspicious of this illumination as the order describes it. He also casts doubt on the professed goal of the Illuminati to create a society where all are equal. He says that teaching morality is the key, not equality, which is an unnatural state. According to Robison, the aim of the order is not to enlighten the mind of man and show him his moral obligations, and by the practice of his duties to make society peaceful and possession, secure, and coercion unnecessary. In reality, it is to remove the restrictions placed upon man by religion. He says, quote, "Their first and immediate aim is to get the possession of riches, power, and influence without industry. And to accomplish this, they want to abolish Christianity and overturn all the civil governments of Europe, and then to pursue further conquest until they have reduced mankind to the state of one indistinguishable, chaotic mass." End quote. What this means, of course, is that the Illuminati are hiding behind a facade of equality, when in reality they merely want to destroy all opposition in order to facilitate their taking of control. The fake mask of humanity and benevolence and equality is necessary to cover their true aims, which is to destroy patriotism and loyalty, because these stand as obstacles to the true goal of achieving total control. Weishaupt, as Spartacus, employs powerful means in the pursuit of his goal. In the style of the Jesuits, he considers every means as consecrated by the end for which it is employed. Robison then quotes from the Aeneid, and he says, "If I cannot bend the heavens above, I will move hell." Weishaupt uses Christianity for his own purposes, to lure Christians into the order, but in the end his goal is to destroy Christianity. Blackmail is also used on prospective members. By the time the candidate realizes what is going on, he is trapped in a web of deceit. Once men are lured in, they are encouraged to continue moving up the hierarchy by the thrill of possibly learning the secrets of the higher mysteries. Weishaupt himself says this about the hidden mysteries, quote, "Of all the means I know to lead men, the most effectual is a concealed mystery. The hankering of the mind is irresistible, and if once a man has taken it into his head that there's a mystery in a thing, it is impossible to get it out, either by argument or experience. And then we can change notions by merely changing a word. What more contemptible than fanaticism? But call it enthusiasm, then add the little word noble, and you may lead him over the world." Thus, the use of semantics is key. Words and symbols are an important method of controlling the mind. The recruits of the order were never to reveal the real secrets of the organization. It was the possibility of attaining these that kept them enslaved. Robison writes, "It is all a trick. He, the recruit, must be kept like a child, amused with rattles and stars and ribbons, and all the satisfaction he obtains is, like the Masons, the fun of seeing others running the same gauntlet." Weishaupt pretends to offer the prospect of freedom and liberty, but really the goal is to destroy them. Robison says that having thus gotten rid of religion, Spartacus could with more safety bring into view the great aim of his efforts, to rule the world by the means of his order. The pupils are convinced that the order will rule the world. Therefore, every member becomes a ruler. Members must promote their brothers over all others. The next step in the strategy, once religion is destroyed, is to get the members to overturn civil government. These revolutionaries were to be used to topple the thrones of rulers. Von Nigg, writing as Philo, says that, "I have been at unwearied pains to remove the fears of some who imagine that our superiors want to abolish Christianity. But by and by their prejudices will wear off, and they will be more at ease. Were I to let them know that our general holds all religion to be a lie, and uses even deism only to lead men by the nose. Were I to connect myself again with the Freemasons and tell them our designs to ruin their fraternity by this circular letter? Were I but to give the least hint to any of the princes of Greece," and that's his term for Bavaria, "no, my anger shall not carry me so far. An order, forsooth, which in this manner abuses human nature, which will subject men to a bondage more intolerable than Jesuitism, I could put it on a respectable footing, and the world would be ours." Robison is particularly disgusted by Weishaupt's plan to corrupt women by destroying their moral sentiments and their sentiments of religion. He writes, quote, "There is nothing in the whole constitution of the Illuminati that strikes me with more horror than the proposals of Hercules and Minos," names for two of the Illuminati members, "to enlist women in this shocking warfare with all that is good and pure and lovely and of good report. They could not have fallen on any expedient that will be more effectual and fatal. If any of my countrywomen shall honor these pages with a reading, I would call on them in the most earnest manner to consider this as an affair of the utmost importance to themselves. I would conjure them by the regard they have for their own dignity and for their rank in society to join against these enemies of human nature and profligate degraders of the sex, and I would assure them that the present state of things almost puts it in their power to be the saviors of the world. But if they are remiss and yield to the seduction, they will fall from that high state to which they have arisen in Christian Europe, and again sink into that insignificancy or slavery in which the sex is found in all ages and countries out of the hearing of Christianity." In Chapter 3 of his book, Robison discusses the spread of Illuminism, despite its formal suppression in Bavaria. He says that Weishaupt wrote, if the order should be discovered and suppressed, he would restore it with tenfold energy in a 12-month. The order continued to enlist new members to carry out its purposes, especially in the Prussian states. Robison says the schisms of Freemasonry facilitated the spread of Illuminism, and that it was easier to diminish the respect for civil establishments in Germany than in almost any other country. In addition, Germany was awash with conflict between Catholics and Protestants, and these were carried on in every little principality. This struggle, according to Robison, eventually became a contest between reason and superstition. People in these various principalities began to gather to form societies for reading and instruction. There began to be talked of a general association to form societies for reading instruction in order to enlighten the nation. This came to be called the German Union. The cover for this organization was that it would root out superstition and prejudices and advance Christianity. In reality, it was to become a secret society with the aim of promoting that general information which priests and despots dreaded above all things. In order to belong to the organization, one had to belong to a reading society and take an oath of secrecy and fidelity. Robison quotes from some of the works of this group. One is addressed to all the friends of reason, of truth, and virtue. It declares that because a great number of persons are laboring with a united effort to bring reason under the yoke and to prevent all instruction, it is therefore necessary that there be a combination which shall work in opposition to them, so that mankind may not sink anew into irrecoverable barbarism, when reason and virtue shall have been completely subdued, overpowered by the restraints which are put on our opinions. For this noble purpose, a company of 22 persons, public instructors, and men in private stations, have united themselves, according to a plan which they have had under consideration for more than a year and a half, and which, in their opinion, contains a method that is fair and irresistible by any human power for promoting the enlightening and forming of mankind, and that will gradually remove all the obstacles which superstition, supported by force, has hitherto put in the way. The mode of operation of the order is detailed in this plan of the 22. There are two classes of the brotherhood, the ordinary and the managing brethren. The latter alone know the aim of the association and all the means for attaining it, and they alone constitute the union, the name, the connection of which is not intended to be at all conspicuous in the world. This illustrates the strategy of compartmentalization used by the order. It creates an inner and an outer group, one in the know, but the majority not in the know. The cover would be reading societies, and the ordinary brethren would know only this aspect of the order. These reading societies would point out which members were intelligent enough to be selected for carrying forward the great work. Books were selected for the reading societies that were in line with the great aim of the association. Meanwhile, the managing brethren observed in secret and selected those persons they thought worthy of joining the sacred union. The job of every member of the reading societies was to spread the doctrine as far and wide as possible, and also to bring the whole trade of bookselling into our hands. Robison also discusses the role of Karl Friedrich Bart's German Union in disseminating the doctrine of Illuminism. He gives a lengthy description of Dr. Bart's occupation as a parish minister and president of an ecclesiastical district. Robison has nothing good to say about Bart and describes him as a profligate monster. This is what he has to say about Bart's personal life. Quote, Bart was married in 1772 while at Gießen, but after wasting the greatest part of his wife's little fortune left her by a former husband, he was provoked by losing 1,000 florins in the hands of her brother, who would not pay it up. After this, he used her very ill and speaks very contemptuously of her in his own account of his life, calling her a dowdy, jealous, and everything contemptible. End quote. In two infamous novels, he exhibits characters in which she is represented in a most cruel manner. Yet this woman, perhaps during the honeymoon, was enticed by him one day into the bath. In the pond of the garden of the Philanthropine at Heidesheim, and there in the sight of all the pupils did he also undress, toy with his naked wife in the water. When at Hal, he used the poor woman extremely ill, keeping a minister in the house and giving her the whole command of his family, while the wife and daughter were confined to a separate part of it. When in prison at Magdeburg, the strumpet lived with him and bore him 2 children, according to Robison. He brought them all to his house when he was set at liberty. Such barbarous usage made the poor woman at last leave him and live with her brother. The daughter died about a year before him of an overdose of laudanum given by her father to procure sleep when ill of a fever. He ended his own wretched life in the same manner, unable, poor man, to bear his distress, without the smallest compunction or sorrow for his conduct, and the last thing he did was to send for a bookseller and recommend his strumpet and her children to his protection, without one thought of his injured wife. Robison finds Bart to be a vile hypocrite, whose real aim in all of his writings to be to make money by fostering the sensual propensities of human nature. He points out that in the institution of Weishaupt was to be found the same train of sensual indulgence, and that purity of heart and life was no part of the morality held forth by the organization, as it preached the perfection of human nature. Robison concludes that since purity of heart is perhaps the most distinctive feature of Christian morality, and Dr. Bart had no conception of this, being a very coarse sensualist himself, the final abolition of Christianity was undoubtedly one of the order's objectives. Robison says that Craving desires beyond the bounds of our means were the natural consequences of indulgence, and since the purity of Christian morality stood in his way, the first care of the order was to clear the road by rooting it out altogether. Further, Robison concludes that the so-called reformers of the Illuminist societies were nothing but crooked politicians. They led their students by means of the meaner desires, and the aim of their teachers was not to inform them, but merely to lead them, not to reform, but to rule the world. He says they would reign though in hell rather than serve in heaven. Dr. Bart was a true apostle of Illuminatism, and though his torch was made of the grossest materials and served to discover sights of woe, the horrid glare darted into every corner, rousing hundreds of filthy vermin and directing their flight to the rotten carrion when they could best deposit their poison and their eggs in the breast, to wit, of the sensual and profligate, there to foster and birth forth in a new and filthy progeny, and it is astonishing what numbers were thus aroused into action. The scheme of reading societies had taken prodigiously and become a very profitable part of the literary trade of Germany. The booksellers and writers soon perceived its importance and acted in concert. Though the Elector of Bavaria acted to suppress the Illuminati order in Bavaria and of the Union of Brandenburg, Robison says these actions were insufficient. Weishaupt and his agents continued to propagate their doctrines and acted in secret correspondence with similar societies in distant places. In the last chapter of the book, Robison discusses the influence of the Illuminati and other hidden societies on bringing about the French Revolution, or at least accelerating it. The secret correspondence he relies upon to reach this conclusion is, in his thinking, abundant evidence that the Illuminati interfered, both in preparing for it in the same manner as in Germany and accelerating its progress. After laying out his case, he concludes that the Illuminati took an active part in the whole transaction and may be said to have been its chief contrivers. Robison discusses the connection between the Count de Mirabeau, a French statesman and author, as well as the leader of the French Revolution in its early stages, and the doctrines of Illuminism. Robison surmises that the grand truths and just morality of the order seem to have had the same effects on the mind of Mirabeau as it did on that of Weishaupt or Bart. In 1786, Mirabeau worked with the Duc de Lauzun and the Abbé Perigord to reform a lodge of Philistines in Paris. In 1788, Mirabeau and the abbé were wardens of this lodge. They sent a letter to the brethren in Germany requesting their assistance and instruction. A deputation was sent from the German Illuminati. Robison says the plan laid forth by this group demonstrated the early intention in France to overturn the Constitution completely. The Illuminati had no other objects. They planned to establish a government of morality, as they called it, where talents and character alone would be of importance. Of course, character and talent as defined in the minds of the Illuminati order. The plan called for the establishment of universal liberty and equality and the rights of man. According to the plan, it would be necessary in preparation to root out all religion and ordinary morality, break the bonds of domestic life, by destroying the veneration for marriage vows, and by taking the education of children out of the hands of parents. Robison clearly despises Mirabeau. However, he also has very harsh words for the Duke of Orleans. He actually prefaces the material in the book about Louis Philippe by stating, quote, "I cannot proceed in the narration without defiling the page with the detested name of Orleans, stained with everything that can degrade or disgrace human nature. This contemptible being was illuminated by Mirabeau and has shown himself the most zealous disciple of the order. In his oath of allegiance, he declares that the interest and the object of the order shall be rated by him above all other relations, and that he will serve it with his honor, his fortune, and his blood. He has kept his word and has sacrificed them all, and he has been treated in the true spirit of the order, used as a mere tool, cheated and ruined. For now I must add that the French borrowed from the Illuminati a maxim, unheard of in any other association of banditti, that of cheating each other." End quote. The Duke of Orleans is described by Robison as being well convinced of the fundamental truths of Illuminism and a true disciple of Weishaupt. Robison quotes from a source he names as a Mr. Latosne. This source has this to say about the Duke of Orleans: that notwithstanding the general contempt of the public for the Duke of Orleans, his authority as Grand Master of the Masons gave him the greatest opportunity that a seditious mind could desire for helping forward the revolution. He had ready to his hand a connected system of hidden societies, protected by the state, habituated to secrecy and artifice, and already tinged with the very enthusiasm he wished to inspire. In these he formed political committees into which only his agents were admitted. He filled the lodges with the French guards, whom he corrupted with money and hopes of preferment. Robison concludes that the Duke of Orleans from the beginning entertained hopes of taking the throne of France for himself, but that the active leaders of that time had quite different views, propelled by their own ambition to be the movers of the plan to overturn government, erect a new one, and place themselves in positions of management over it. He has this to say about the effect of the Illuminati teachings on the French at the time of the French Revolution. Thus were the stupid Bavarians, as the French were once pleased to call them, their instructors in the art of overturning the world. The French were indeed the first to put it into practice. These committees arose from the Illuminati in Bavaria, who had by no means given over working, and these committees produced the Jacobin Club. There is surely no natural connection between Freemasonry and Jacobinism, but we see the link, Illuminatism. The intelligence saw in the open system of the Jacobins the complete hidden system of the Illuminati. We know that this system included the whole world in its aims, and France was only the place of its first explosion. The propaganda works in every corner to this hour, and its emissaries run about in all the four quarters of the world and are to be found in numbers in every city that is a seat of government. At the very end of his book, Robison relays the words of Weishaupt, who says, quote, "There will be a terrible convulsion and a storm, but this will be succeeded by a calm. The unequal will now be equal. And when the cause of dissension is thus removed, the world will be in peace." End quote. Needless to say, Robison does not believe this state of affairs is possible as described by Weishaupt. He states, "The principles which authorize the proposed dreadful equalization will as justly entitle the idle or unsuccessful of future days to strip the possessor of his advantages, and things must ever remain on their savage level." See you next time.